comment, bienvenue, welcome once again to another live stream. We're returning to a format that we started right at the beginning, which loosely termed was what's grinding Chris's gears this week about the property market. And I would say this one's no exception. This one's got three elements to it. Today we're going to cover, in no particular order, as they say in these X Factor shows, government open data policy, which I've only just learned about, which is amazing. The LHA rates have recently been published, and they are going to have certain knock-on effects to an already perturbed marketplace. And then on top of that, an overall moan about the ever-increasing price of property. And Chris, welcome.
Hello.
All right, I'm gonna throw you a bone. What is going on, Chris?
Well, so it's been highly publicised about the LHA rates increasing over the last
Right.
few months, and they're here, so they're coming in. Well, they are in right now.
Did you know before that there were going to be such a massive uplift?
Well, they are pegged to the market rents, a certain percentage of the open market rents, and they've been frozen since 2019.
Right, yeah.
Anyone renting or anyone in the private rental sector knows how much rents have gone up since 2019.
Yeah, well, they'll be complaining about it, and I guess your position is this is where it should have been in the first place. It was artificially held back.
I think it was very stagnant for quite some time previously.
Right.
Landlords historically they will not normally pump the rent while tenants are there. I understand their perspective in that they don't want to rock the boat if they've got what they deem as a good tenant, someone who pays on time and doesn't give them any stick. But it creates a disconnect between reality because unfortunately because the fiat money system that we live in, we have inflation, and that means prices go up all every year. Now, if the landlord is then artificially depressing the rent rates, when that tenant comes to re-rent wherever that may be, they're going to be shocked
by reality, aren't they?
Yeah, they're going to be absolutely shocked. So it has been very stagnant for quite some time, and then 2019-20 it all shot up. I mean, there were other factors as well that caused inflation to shoot up around that time, which generally has another upwards impact on all costs.
Right.
But yeah, so LHA rates, local housing allowance rates, social housing rates that some people do rely on, they've been frozen since 2019. So obviously we've got this massive 4 or 5 year window in between where everything's gone bananas. The challenge that people on LHA or using LHA housing benefit in the meantime is that the properties that have been in the rental sector that they may have gone for previously, they're becoming less and less attainable as those market rents are going further up. So there's been upwards pressure on the government to open up the LHA rates and unfreeze them. So that's been very important to make sure that the people who rely on LHA can remain competitive in the market. So that's now changing. I've been on the government websites.
So now would you say they're in step?
So it follows what's called the 30th percentile. If you're a statistician, that must mean something to you, but all I understand is that's below market rents, but it's linked to market rents at a certain rate. But I guess the good side, the bad side, however you want to deem it, there's been at least a 20% jump across the board. We were expecting higher in certain parts of the country, between 25 and 40%. Wow. Probably if you drill into it, I'm sure there's been some. I would expect some sort of data manipulation from the Valuations Office Agency.
We call it jiggery and pokery, I think. But yes.
Yeah. So to keep it somewhat lower than it probably should be, because obviously they can select and choose which data points they want to put into their data in the first place. So rubbish in, rubbish out. But we've been, so I was trawling through the data sets today, and LHA rents are linked into what the country is carved up into what the government's called for this particular, the VOA is called for this particular exercise, broad rental market areas, BRMAs, which are kind of across counties, but then they bring in other counties as well, and so that nothing quite lines up. So, for example, Merseyside, where I am, it's not one of the 6 boroughs. It's like a mishmash of some are in Part and some are in of what they call Greater Liverpool, and some are in different areas.
Right.
So it doesn't overlap perfectly. You'd expect it to, because I mean, yeah, for multiple reasons. But anyway, so the government's got these open standards, which is a great idea in theory for all their data. I mean, we own the data, so we shouldn't have to have proprietary software to access the data, and it should be available to us to access, which is great. But yeah, I was getting my knickers into this before because I couldn't. The government hasn't got any BRMA maps that you can just click and open up in a browser. So you've got to go and they'll give you a data set in some really weird file extension, and but they won't tell you where to find the software to open that file. So super duper helpful. So that's been a frustration for me this morning as I'm trying to match up certain areas and project some of the rental increases that we're expecting to impact our business moving forwards. And it's important. You need to be able to know and plot out your investment areas and see where you're expecting your costs and your revenues to go as you're trying to plan your business. So a little bit frustrated this morning with them, but it's useful that the data's there, and I'm sure I'll get into it somehow. Because it's obviously it's crucial data, so it's going to help us.
I think you've got to be careful what you wish for. If you want open access to data, you've got to expect them to pick a format that is not controlled by any particular organ, and that then creates its own challenges, which is effectively what you're saying.
I'm all for free open source software. I think open source is the way to go. But yeah, a couple of pointers to a couple of different apps they might be able to use. That'd be really helpful.
What you're saying is good communication is probably useful here, and if they bloody communicated how you're supposed to open the damn things, life would be a lot easier. I get you. All right. Let's not moan about that. But although I appreciate the confusion, but there's an overall problem here, is there not? Which is, at the moment, the property prices are doing that.
Yeah, so I mentioned as we were off air that between 2017 and 2019, the last time we had a proper market cycle, and which we're going back to now, the average asking prices for property has gone up by 100 grand, and the average sold price has gone up by 60 grand. So there is already a significant upwards movement in the market, and this is not going to help. So there's going to be a bit of a gold rush at the moment, now that the LHA rates have opened up and increased by roughly 20%, because it means that properties that were previously not commercially viable for a landlord to purchase with a view to going into social housing have now become more commercially viable. So there'll be more people coming into this particular space, and it'll be again continuing to squeeze the market and have an upwards impact on prices. Again, won't be alleviated until we increase supply, which the government's doing nothing about, really.
Yes, well, look, as I said to you off air, this is a moan that I and many other people have had since the Labour years. Since New Labour, no real houses have been built, and certainly under the stewardship of the Conservative government, all the various different efforts that there have been, all the various different prime ministers and none of them have ever really pushed hard so that there'll be new house build.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are. We're in an ever decreasing availability of decent stock, and now Now that the LHA rates have been lit, suddenly the scope for people to rent these more expensive properties has suddenly become wider, which means potentially there'll be as you say, a race to the bottom for everybody to try and grab whatever remaining properties there are, rent them out to these people who now can afford to spend more expensive rent, leaving the rest of the world who are not defined by LHA even worse off. People who previously could scrape it together, get their 3-bedroom or 2-bedroom duplex somewhere, whatever it is, now can barely afford a broom cupboard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's the position that we're in, and it will continue to get worse unless supply is opened up. So I'm aware of developers who are trying to do new developments that are commercially viable for the open market. But again, they're very much hamstrung by the cost of land, the cost of materials. So there's a restriction on what they can build. Now, the flip side of that is housing associations. They do have the capital and they do have the business plan to actually provide more stock. They have large surpluses. They have many of them have their own building divisions as an aside to their main business, and their business plan is they will retain the stock so they can amortize it over a long period of time, then recoup the cost over say 25 years. And no developer can do that. The developers will build normally to sell. That's just the way that they operate. So there are avenues that could be pursued. They're just not being pursued. They're going down.
There's lots of brownfield sites, and
Mhm.
dare I say it, even some greenfield
Yep.
sites
Mhm.
that could be quite easily. I mean, even where I'm living near here, there are some perfectly viable sites that could be used. I mean,
Mhm.
albeit they seem to be producing these horrendous toy town effects, but you understand what I'm saying. They could be easily done. Why isn't there more of an impetus to
Well,
why aren't people champing at the bit?
it's an interesting one because when you look through the strategic housing land allocations and then the housing delivery tests, and you see which councils have failed repeatedly, and then you try and look into their reasoning behind it. They've got every reason under the sun that they can't use this, that, or the other site. But yeah, it's I think there are many multiple facets that are being that are preventing the opening up of supply. Local authorities don't do much to help themselves. Planning officers seem to be negatively geared to focus on reasons to not allow a project
I
rather
keep
than to work
hearing
with
this.
developers.
I keep
Yeah,
hearing this. They, they,
yeah.
they, se- they seem to be against it. I mean, counter that with the planning regs relaxation that you've been talking about,
Hmm.
or that is going on at the same time, which is also going to drive a lot more people to expand existing properties.
Yeah, which is good. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not the way around it should be. I
No,
mean, no, it's not the way around.
no. Planning officers in particular are negatively geared. Their MO is to find reasons in the legislation that will prevent a project from happening,
Computer says no.
rather than the other way around, finding ways around the legislation to make sure that it can happen. So, yeah, it's disappointing the way that the system is set up, and so I think the permitted development rights will bring a little bit of joy in that there are rights that are enshrined, and then you just go to the planning officer and say, "This is what I'm doing within the terms of my permitted development rights." So yeah, that will help people who already have the home and want to kind of extend where they are, and provide a larger footprint for their
Right,
family or their
right, right.
tenants.
It's a frustrating situation.
I keep depressing you, don't I, Gareth? I'm sorry about that.
No, not depressing. I just can. It's irritating when you can see a really good way ahead, and you could see that it would make profit for the. I mean, let's face it. If guys, developers out there, people who are willing to build stuff, listen to me hit now. If you're willing to put some time and effort into it, there's a guaranteed marketplace out there for you to rent what you've produced out there and instantly get more rent than you were originally perceived just through the LHA. But having said that, they won't take the risk, will they? They'll stick with what they've always done.
Potentially, I think there are some developers doing build to rent. I don't think there's a huge amount of them. I think that we are quite reliant on the housing associations to provide that sort of stock.
I think they're missing a trick. I really
but
think they're missing a trick.
Potentially, yeah. In terms of the challenge is that they have money, they have capital going into each transaction, and they need to be able to, if they're going to retain it, they need to be able to refinance it back out at a certain level. So it depends on
I just think if they built
a number of variables.
I think if they built small mini communities, and a portion of which was guaranteed towards social housing, to work towards that. So some of it they could recoup it on selling a portion of it. That would get them recoup their monies, and then they would still get their investment back even more so over time from the higher LHA. I could see it just a real. I wish I had the kind of money to do it. My goodness.
Like I say, it's a cost challenge. So cost of land, cost of materials, cost of labor. So the project's still got to be profitable at the end of the day.
And you need to get it back in a reasonable time, otherwise.
Which is why you could argue for pushing the housing associations to do these types of projects, because, like I say, they don't have a developer's mindset they can amortize over a long period of time.
Right. Well, look. All right. I think I'm gonna unwind it up there. Look, Chris, give me something positive to hang on to.
The positive steps are for people who are investing right now. We're in a bit of a gold rush, so get involved before the prices go up. It's also good news for the people who are reliant on LHA, because it opens up the number of properties that they can look at now, which is
good. Tenants out there who use LHA, you guys potentially have got a much wider scope. You're not stuck with perhaps a less desirable property. You now got the scope to look at something slightly better. But I would say get off your asses if this is because the market will level up, and it will once again become as it was before, just reevaluating based on the new scope. Chris, you educate me and depress me in equal measure. Having said that, I still see, as you do, so many positives in this. As Chris once taught me, and it's a lesson well learned, it doesn't matter what the crisis is, there's usually an opportunity in there if you look hard enough. On that note, thank you so much for your time, Chris. Chris Gilsenan from Root Home, developers of social housing. My name is Gareth Wax of Many Purple Hats. I wish all of you a fabulous weekend and, of course, great mental health. Bye-bye now.